Welcome back, everyone, to the Hearthstone Championship Tour, your winter preliminaries. I am D2, and joining me on the desk is Brian Kibler of Brian Kibler Gaming. I've always wanted to say that. Also joining me is Naiman of Team Liquid. Guys, we have a really interesting match coming up on our hands between Naiman and Kolemoen. Naiman, a player who was disqualified from playing in the 2015 Hearthstone Championship, and now he's looking to make a comeback.
Yeah, he's really here for redemption. You know, he wants to prove that he belongs here in the competitive Hearthstone scene. And Kolemoen is a player who many of the European casters here have told us that they've seen a lot of and expect great things from already.
Yeah, we saw Kolemoen be brave and bring 3 combo decks in form of Freeze Mage, Oil Rogue, and the Patron Warrior. And those are some of the most difficult decks to pilot, and he has made it so far with them. It's going to be really interesting to see how he's going to do against Naiman.
Yeah, we actually have yet to see Naiman on camera, so we don't have quite the insight into exactly what he is playing, the specific builds of those decks. We just saw his lineup on there as well. What do you think about it, D2?
Well, I mean, Naiman is a player who was obviously pretty accomplished in 2015. Just looking at our notes, he got top 4 Gfinity in 2015. Also tweets a lot about his high ladder performances then. So even though he was disqualified from playing in the championship series last year, he's able to basically bring it back this year. Has obviously a lot of accomplishments. And like you said, Kolemoen is someone who all the pro players seem to be aligning with, a player that we saw earlier today. So it's going to be a pretty good match, I'm expecting.
Yeah, we saw the bans from the two players, and that could often reveal a lot about what the lineups, sort of the texture of the lineups can be. We saw that the Shaman that Naiman had was actually the ban choice for Kolemoen. What do you think about that?
I think that's an easy one. The combo decks generally, especially the Rogue, struggles a lot against the Shaman. The Shaman is just too fast, and the Rogue will never get to do things like the Auctioneer preparation plays.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, I'd actually forgotten that he was playing the Auctioneer version too. It wasn't even Oil Rogue. It was Auctioneer. Ooh, I'm excited.
Yeah, I actually wasn't able to see this, so I'm pretty excited to see this matchup. 3 combo decks. I mean, anything else you can tell us, Savits?
Well, we don't know the Warlock deck, what deck is going to be.
Right.
And actually, what was the ban from the other side?
I think it was Mage.
It was the Mage that was
Mage
banned,
is gone. Okay.
So.
So we're going to get to see the Warlock, and I would actually imagine that, considering the other lineup, that the Warlock deck would not be a Zoo Warlock, although that's been the most popular choice for a lot of players. It just wouldn't make as much sense to bring it in a combo-based lineup like it does in a more aggressive style.
It would also make a lot of sense given his ban of the Shaman deck. The Shaman deck is, as a very aggressive Shaman deck, we assume it's an aggressive Shaman deck. We haven't really seen much in the way of mid-range Shaman recently. That would be very strong against combo Warlock in particular.
Right. Yeah, definitely not seeing any mid-range Shaman at the moment. The only real viable deck in competitive play right now is that, basically face Shaman, the aggressive Shaman that likes to hit you hard with that Doom Hammer. It looks like we're getting into game 1 here between these 2 players. Kolemoen obviously back here, and it's going to be what looks to be a Tempo Mage versus the Patron Warrior from Kolemoen.
Yeah, so Naiman with an aggressive lineup, not only bringing the Shaman, but his Mage is also not freeze, but instead he's playing the Tempo Mage. Looking at quite a good starting hand with that coin, he can just keep all of that 1, 2, 4.
Yeah, that's an excellent start from Naiman here. One of the big strengths of this, obviously Mana Worm, but also Unstable Portal, giving him something productive to do on turn 2 that can pump his Mana Worm and potentially represent a tempo play as well.
Yep, not looking too bad for Kolemoen either though. There's the Fiery War Axe, and that is the best card you can hope for in your starting hand against an aggressive mage.
Literally, if each of these players could choose one card in their starting hand, they got it. It would have been Mana Worm, it would have been War Axe.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, and it looks like it's going to be up to this Unstable Portal to be providing something for Naiman here. Otherwise, there's really nothing to do. The good thing for him is he can play the Flame Cannon for that Frolic Berserker if he doesn't want.
Oh wow,
that's very interesting. It could there's obviously that drawback, right? It puts the other card back into your hand, but it's a big boy.
I was just about to say that he could have coined out the 5/5 there, but it could have been very weak to the Slam in combination with the Fiery War Axe. And while he didn't have the Slam just yet, he did get it from the top, so it kind of worked out for Naiman.
Yeah, Naiman also potentially wants to use his coin to put out Shredder next turn.
Oh, yeah.
Because right now his curve is a little bit awkward, though. That Ambusher actually, interestingly, could perhaps represent just a minion he can play here on turn 3 in addition to a Flame Cannon to kill that.
Yeah.
Right, works out
perfectly. Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely. Fits right in the curve, and that's a big threat. Kolemoen has to at least be thinking about, okay, how do I deal with this? There's the weird thing with the drawback on Ambusher. He may want to kind of leave that in play because it strands other minions in Naiman's hands in a way. But it does do 5 damage a turn every time it does.
Yeah, I think Naiman would just sit there and keep hitting the face in that spot, right? You just
yeah.
I mean, it's something that you could possibly do. Potentially even just go with the Frostbolt to shut off that ability to attack into it.
If he coins out the Azure Drake, that's not the worst thing to bounce
Right,
back
sure.
to. And it does throw a
That's
card.
true.
It's true, yeah.
Oh, the greed coming out from Kolemoen here, going with that Acolyte of Pain, realizing he can just take it out whatever comes next. Duplicate is something we don't see too often, or I should say every single time in Tempo Mage, but it could work out pretty well here. I mean, 4 mana 5/5s just coming out of the hand seems pretty good.
Yeah.
They do sort of strand other minions in Naiman's hand. I'm not sure that's what I would want to duplicate, but it does put Kolemoen in an interesting position because, you know, does he just leave this 5/5 up continuously? I don't know.
I think he has to go for the Naiman has to go for the coin Drake here. Well, this Shredder looks so nice. What if the Ambusher dies to something like a Slam, Fire Vorax, or an Execute? He loses so much tempo there.
He still does with the Azure Drake, but he at least potentially picks up an additional card in the future turn.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is an interesting spot. This is one of the reasons that I really like a lot of the cards that do add random elements to the game. Things like whether they're Portal or the Discover mechanic. They can put players in situations they just haven't been in before because, you know, hey, you never played against a Tempo Mage deck that had an Ambusher.
Yeah, exactly.
This doesn't happen. So you have to figure it out.
Yeah, he's going to go for that.
Interesting.
I mean, the coin Drake isn't like that obvious because the coin is very valuable going forward in the game because I'm certain that he's playing some Flame Wakers, so that will allow him to combo for some free missiles, or maybe going out the Dr. Boom on turn 6 if he picks it up.
Yeah, Coin is a particularly powerful card in Tempo Mage, like you mentioned, because of the synergy with the spell-based things, whether they're the other Mana Worm he might pick up later, or Flame Waker, things like that.
Right, but here he is. That drawback is quite bad for Naiman now from that Ambusher, but it is what it is, and the Shredder is returning to his hand.
Yeah, this is why I thought that Duplicate might not have been the worst thing. Obviously, having all these minions in your hand that kind of have anti-synergy with each other because they pop back might not be the greatest, but right now, Naiman, I mean, he has a full hand, not a full hand completely, but he has a pretty big hand for a Tempo Mage, so not looking the worst, but basically Kolemoen, his job here is to just stave off the Tempo Mage.
Looking at this hand from Naiman, I actually think that there's a decent chance that he could just go for a value game right here. Normally, when playing Tempo Mage, you the name of the deck already says it. You want to play for tempo, you want to play it fast and try to end the game quickly. But with a duplicate and double Azure Drakes, I wouldn't be too surprised if it just chose, okay, I think I go for value and maybe use some of the removal on my opponent's minions. And
yeah, duplicate in particular does give that additional element to the deck, especially if you're playing against, say, Control Warrior. You would be really afraid of running into all the big late game legendaries, perhaps Justicar Trueheart, really closing out your window of potentially winning the game. But like you said, in this matchup, you can play a much more value-oriented game because they don't really have those same cards. We do see that Kolemoen, however, does have the two big legendaries typically in Patreon decks already in his hand.
That's true, but this turn is looking a little bit lackluster. What can he really do? Like, those battle rates are looking pretty awkward. I would have been surprised if he cycled one of them, only drawing one card. That's not what you want to do, but I think he has to do it and hope to pick up a Death Spite.
Oh, that slam is perfect
yeah.
here. So in that case, obviously the battle rage works out pretty well. Even though it feels kind of bad, it worked out perfectly for him. And going back to what you're saying, Savitz, I mean, obviously Kolemoen is in a better spot than he was last turn, but at the same time, Grim Patron is a deck that its strength is in the fact that he can play mid-range, but also has those combo effects. But the fact that you have to have those combo pieces in hand, that's Arcane Blast pretty good here.
That's a good show. You could even play the Mana Worm and then coin out the Arcane Blast, but there is that Fiery Vorax waiting, so I wouldn't blame him for just blasting them.
Yeah, I was actually thinking we were going to see the Azure Drake into coin Frostbolt that turn, but the Arcane Blast, the perfect answer.
Yeah.
All right, do you just slam the Dr. Boom here, or what can you go for if you're a Kolemoen? Obviously, that Dreadcore still, it just feels kind of bad to not be able to get that that value out, the reduced mana cost, but at the same time, Dr. Boom is green.
I think in particular, playing Dr. Boom when your opponent does not have a secret out is fairly important, because there's a lot of instances where you won't be able to safely play Dr. Boom into a potential mirror entity against Tempo Mage, and the coast is clear here. I think he wants to play it.
Yeah, seems like a very good time to just go for it here. Also, the optional plays seemed fairly weak with that Dread Corsair and the maybe like Unstable Ghoul, but that wouldn't really work out so well against Drake.
Right, so how many secrets do you expect from this deck? We're seeing the duplicate right here. Typically, it's something like double Mirror Entity or Mirror Entity Counterspell, maybe double Mirror Entity Counterspell, something like that. But with the duplicate in hand, I mean, maybe there's 3 secrets. What do you guys expect here?
I mean, it's tough to say, and that's one of the reasons that Tempo Mage can be a tricky deck to play against sometimes, because secrets, well, they're kind of secret. You don't really know what they are until they happen to you.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that the different players prefer to play different amount of secrets. Some might play 2. I've even seen some versions with only 1 secret and 2 scientists a while ago, but I think that most players have drifted away from that style.
These arcane missiles are absolutely huge. Let's see where they land. Picks off a boom bot, starts getting damage on Dr. Boom, hits the face. That's perfect. That is the best. Well, other than killing off the mad scientist, which would have been nice as well, that's pretty good for Naiman here.
Yeah, definitely a good result from that boom, but the arcane missile itself was not the best one ever, but it was decent.
Right.
The Grom here, just as a removal effect, seems fairly attractive, I have to imagine.
Yeah, all of a sudden, Kolemoen is at 14 health. He needs to start getting things off the board.
Yeah, I mean, while Naiman didn't have the most aggressive opening, just getting a couple hits in here, and Kolemoen hasn't been gaining armor through any means, and has been using his weapons as removal, so he's taking quite a bit of damage.
It's true, but Naiman doesn't have any burn in his hand just yet, so Kolemoen, we know that Kolemoen can still use that Fiery War Axe here and just take a little bit of damage, but from his point of view, he might already be thinking of should he be like maybe taunting up or going for some card draws for Armor Smith.
Yeah, it looks like it's probably going to be an execute play here.
Ooh,
doesn't kill the mad scientist. That's actually good for Kolemoen.
Oh, well, that was, yeah, I think that overall went pretty well because he doesn't want to see a mirror entity come out. So
exactly.
he could potentially play some sort of large minion this turn. Or any minion, really. Any of the minions in his hand with the exception of Unstable Ghoul.
Yep, here we go.
So going down to the wire here, gonna go pick up some cards first and then play out an execute. Plus I imagine the Dread Corsair and the Paladin Shredder. Let's see if he got it all out. And probably gonna attack this Mana Worm as well, so.
Looks like he probably did.
There you go.
Yep. Yeah, there it is. So down to 11 life, not the safest position, but Naiman with no actual burn to players in his hand. Arcane Blast he just picked up could take out that Dr. Boom, but it cannot go face.
No.
Unfortunately not, yeah.
And yeah, there's not really all that much to do. I guess just maybe Shredder into the duplicate. It's kind of decent. But then he can't ping.
Yeah,
you kind of want to ping here.
Right,
yeah.
he'd love to be able to get the Shredder and duplicate on board and get rid of the Dread Corsair with his hero power, but he's 1 mana short, including the coin.
Do you think there's some hesitation here because there might be a second duplicate? Maybe he doesn't want to play a second Mad Scientist?
Maybe. I mean, it could be a double duplicate Tempo Mage deck. Those are actually well, clearly not, as his duplicate is still lit up here.
Well, he could have other secrets, but yeah. So actually, the fact that he started highlighting it after maybe seems like it could be.
It's possible, yeah.
Because he was thinking about whether it was there.
He was seeing if it was possible for him to still do that. He is holding on to that coin.
Huh.
He's taking it with him to the afterlife potentially.
Could it be effigy? Because he didn't.
Possibly, yeah. That's another possible option.
All right, so for Kolemoen here, has a few options. Could go for the Grump, but it's pretty scary into a secret.
Yeah,
sure is.
And so maybe he just goes for that Unstable Ghoul, see if it procs, and then go for the Deathbite afterward. The unfortunate part about that is, yes, you get to put in that hero power, but you're not really using your mana too efficiently.
Well, I mean, the Unstable Ghoul Deathbite hero power, I think is totally reasonable for a turn here. If you do get your opponent's mirror entity out of the way, you're able to get in 4 damage with your Shredder as well, and then you still have Grom, Inner Rage, and a Deathbite up.
Yeah, I mean, just slamming the Grom, hoping that it's not Mirror Entity, he would still have the Inner Rage in his hand to enrage his own Grom, to take out the copied Grom.
If he does, yeah, he has the option of just playing Grom if he does want to.
And we still have 4 health left, I believe. So actually, he's going to go for the lethal here over 2 turns. Not something I
actually like this a lot. I think this is a very strong play here. Going for the Ghoul as well. So with the Inner Rage, Grom, and the Deathbite, it would be enough.
We see it is Mirror Entity, so will Kolemoen have the ability to win after this? We'll see. Arcane Intellect's a pretty good pickup here for Naiman. I imagine he just starts off with that.
Can he pick up lethal here maybe somehow?
Flame Cannon and Frostbolt.
Well, he can freeze face with that if he wants to.
Right, I mean, after you saw your opponent basically hit your face, you're expecting Grom at this point.
Yeah, it's likely to be Grom, but does it help? It might help, depending on how much he can clear the other minions for.
He can actually kill both other minions if he wants. He can attack his Shredder into the Unstable Ghoul, attack his Unstable Ghoul into the Shredder with the double Death Rattle and kill both of them. That, however, leaves him in a position where that wasn't really what he wanted to hit, I don't think.
No.
I think it was reasonable either
okay,
way, though.
I mean,
because now
he Frostbolt to face.
He could push damage to face as well. Maybe play this Mad Scientist. He could go for the duplicate, though. get a couple. I mean, if he's worried about dying, right, getting a couple unstable ghouls in your hand is not too bad.
Usually you're not terribly happy about unstable ghouls being what you might be duplicating. But right now, I mean, Naiman's also at the point where his cards are not that valuable. The duplicate. If the game is ending in a couple turns, it's not going to do much.
It's actually pretty close to lethal with just like using the inner rage on the ghoul and then whirlwinding after the Grom is on the board. But the problem with that is that the Shredder is also going to die from his side, because one damage would be from the whirlwind and another one from the ghoul.
All right, so tense times here for Kolemoen. What can he do to... I guess he doesn't have any sort of weird, crazy lethal here, right? So... so you have to stay alive, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, at Kolemoen's position now, he's kind of playing defense. He's actually at risk of dying just to the board. He can only go up to 7 with his hero power, and there's that much damage on board.
So I think you just use this Grom as removal. If he's been paying attention, he knows there's a coin and a card in Naiman's hand. So, and obviously, if it was a fireball, I think he'd be dead already.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, there's no lethal to be found, so without like maybe some ridiculous Shredder outcome.
Yeah, you can see what comes out. He needs to see what comes off the Shredders first, regardless. His is going to die here.
Flame Totem? No, that wouldn't still do it. I'm trying to think of lethal.
All right, so now probably going to play... actually,
I think he wants to play Grom and then
first,
Whirlwind, because if there's another mirror entity, he doesn't want to give his opponent the...
Exactly, yeah. So probably going to kill off this Mech Warper here, and no armor up. So is there going to be lethal for Naiman if he picks it up?
Flame Waker? It could be.
If it was all face.
Yeah, he really...
What's the odds? Like 1 in 81?
Fire Lord guide me right here.
All right, that is not it, unfortunately, and that
inner rage is going to seal it.
Naiman does not know that there's an inner rage here, so...
Yeah, that's true. So we're not going to see a concede, but Kolemoen is not going to miss this lethal.
Well, this
could be counterspell.
It could be counterspell. There's a full taskmaster.
There you go.
He should definitely test for the counterspell, though, because Naiman is going to have the deck available.
He should actually play both, I would believe.
I think so too. Oh, smart concede.
Yeah,
right
that was actually a very good concede from Naiman to not potentially leak any more information.
Yeah, he had his finger on the concede button right there. One of the few times where
8 PM in Hearthstone.
That was one of the best concedes I've ever seen. Usually
it really was. That was an excellent concede, and I'm not even kidding. Yeah. Usually when you're like, man, that concede was great, it's like kind of sarcastic. It's like, no, that was actually an intelligent strategic concede.
Yes.
So he doesn't know if it's not counterspell either, right? Because that was super quick. I don't think that the game could have gotten that.
No,
fast.
we would not have seen the graphic. We would not have seen. We saw the animation happen. We would not have seen that if counterspell happened. We would have seen the counterspell animations.
Yeah, we saw the buff go in the Grom, I believe. So it was not counterspell. We know that there's 3 secrets. It could be effigy. It could be a second mirror entry.
So Kolemoen has to be kind of vigilant, right? Needs to look. Oh, the bluff did go on my creatures, so.
One situation where the concede was not so good was that if it was Vaporize.
Well, if it's Vaporize, I don't think you would have conceded.
You're giving away that you don't have Vaporize. I suppose that is something.
True. You're giving away that you don't have Vaporize right now.
That's true. That is true. Could still be in the deck. Maybe it's just a secret mage. It's not a temple mage.
And if you did have Vaporize, that would seriously level him if you get him with it later.
Yeah, that would be pretty bad concede in this situation.
But Kolemoen does get the win with his warrior deck, and now has Rogue and that Warlock deck, as I believe you were saying, we have not quite seen yet. Left to win.
It could be an aggro Warlock. Like that is, I believe it's something like 8 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 have been the Zoo Warlocks that we've seen in this tournament. But considering his lineup, I would imagine that it's like maybe the Reno Leroy combo Warlock or something like that.
It does seem like it fits, at least, whether, I don't know if it's strategically, but stylistically, it seems like, those are the kind of decks with Freeze Mage, Patron Warrior, and not even just Oil Rogue, but Miracle Rogue, Gadgets and Auctioneer Rogue.
Right.
So I would imagine that's very likely what we're going to see.
Yeah, definitely. It does go with his deck. And at the same time, I mean, we've seen some zoos kind of struggle, and the couple...
Yep, there we go.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
And the OTK with the Arcane Golem this time. Last time we saw it was the Leroy.
That was close, though.
What do you think about Leroy versus Arcane Golem?
Personally, I like the Arcane Golem a little bit more. I think that sometimes you can close out the games a little bit faster, and also you have the access to pulling off the combo without the Emperor. So if the Emperor is somewhere in your last few cards, you can still go for the Arcane Golem double power overwhelming phases if you pick up the second power overwhelming from a peddler.
Right.
Yeah, I think I tend to agree with you. The versions of Reno Lock that I have liked to play, just because I think they're more fun, are the ones with the Thaddeus brothers. Like if you get, whenever you actually cast that Twisting Nether that we see in Kolemoen's hand with both of them on board, not only do you get tons of awesome animations, but you get 2 11/11s in play.
How awesome is that?
Yeah, one thing that I mean, I've played that deck a lot as well, having the Thaddeus brothers, Salag and Fugan. Well, the one problem is that if you are facing any Infinite Paladin, one deck I've wanted to see this entire time. We saw it once, but it's very weak if you don't have that OTK potential.
Well, and similarly, you are actually an underdog against the versions of Warlock that do have the burst combo, simply because you're trying to play this long attrition game, and they have the ability to just kill you from around 20 life.
Exactly, yeah, that can be a very difficult matchup as well. But we are getting into this game with the Divine Favor-filled Secret Paladin from Naiman, so a more aggressive kind of variant.
Yeah, and that Divine Favor is a very important card in this matchup in particular. Warlock, in general, obviously has a lot of card draw power with its hero power. But,
he's just going to go for it.
I'm just going to draw.
How many?
I'll just draw 5.
5 cards.
Just turn 3, draw 5.
Sounds pretty good.
He's not gonna waste any time. He didn't really have a particularly efficient play that turn either, so I totally get just firing that off right there.
Yeah, draw 5 or make a dude. I mean, it's pretty.
He had the Seeker Keeper, so he could have played Seeker Keeper into Recruit, but he gets to draw 5 cards and reload and give himself a lot more options for future turns.
Yeah, you can't say no to that. It's way too good to pass up. It's very likely that Kolemoen would also coin out the 4-drop, so then there's going to be less cards in his hand. And when do you cast the Divine Favor afterwards? Like at 4 mana? 5 mana?
His hand was also fairly clogged with relatively expensive cards. He had 2 4-drops already in his hand. So it's not like he was going to be able to dump his hand to 1 or 0 cards and then cast the Divine Favor. So using his mana very efficiently and just getting a big hand right away.
Yep, some of those new cards that he picked up were a little bit on the weaker side with the Redemption and the Avenge. He would just rather pick up 1 Mysterious Challenger than those 2 Secrets, but still not too bad.
If you think of it this way, though, if he hadn't gone for that, then maybe those are the next 5 cards that he gets, and he would have been a really horrible spot.
That's also true.
It is true.
You can think about it that way.
All right, well, we have some options here for Naiman. He can go for that Keeper of Oldamon to make that guy a bit smaller. Afterward, he can't really kill it still, but I mean, it's just really nice to hurt that guy for 5, bring down some of his damage as well. We do see that there's the Noble Sacrifice on the board right now, so obviously a lot of options for Naiman with all those cards in hand.
Yeah, I kind of like the Keeper of Uldaman. Just use it here straight away. Does deal that 5 damage. Pilot the Shredder, also not a bad play. Gives him a pretty nice redemption potentially for the next turn.
Yeah, with the Noble Sacrifice up, no matter what, Kolemon's going to be attacking that, if he does attack this turn, into a Noble Sacrifice. So it's not necessarily clear whether the Keeper sort of neutering the power of that a little bit is nearly as relevant as it might be at a later stage of the game. I think that Keeper is probably one of the cards that can be pretty important to potentially break through like a large taunt minion in this matchup, and I think that Naiman might want to hold on to it for a more crucial situation and just develop his board here.
That's true, and I also think that he has a pretty nice follow-up in this situation with that second Shredder and the Redemption, leaving him maybe with only 2 Shredders on the board, in which case Kolemoen has to Redemption one of the Shredders, and that's not exactly what you would like to give your opponent.
Right, so Knife Juggler comes in the hand. Actually, the second Knife Juggler. So going to be this Shielded Mini-Bot coming here for, the Blessing of Kings on the Shielded Mini-Bot. Maybe that's what he was planning for the last turn, being able to get this nice trade in. And you can use that Keeper later. I mean, it's basically one of the best cards in your deck, obviously.
That's one of the best uses of Blessing of Kings is when you are able to use it on a Divine Shield minion to kill a large minion, because you don't get any damage on your own minion, so you get the full value of Kings plus basically killing your opponent's minion.
I don't think it gets any better than that. He didn't even waste any damage. That Twilight Drake was exactly at 6 HP.
Exactly, and it feels really bad for Kolemoen, for instance, to Owl here, because you're not even taking out the Divine Shield that already got all of its value. So if you're Kolemoen here, what do you go for? If you go for Loatheb, maybe your opponent just plays Mysterious Challenger, so that definitely feels bad. And honestly, everything else is just kind of awkward here. Big Game, I mean, the thing is, maybe you Owl here, because later on you can almost certainly use Big Game Hunter if the Mysterious Challenger comes up next turn. So all in all, just kind of a precarious position for Kolemoen.
Using the Owl first, though, is also kind of risky, because if this is Avenge, you're potentially just giving it. Well, though, if it is Avenge, you do have Big Game Hunter in your hand, so you actually may want to set up if this is Avenge.
Right.
But this is actually, it would work out better if it were.
No.
But
the mind games, Naiman making it seem like it was Avenge, but now he gets an extra Shredder.
Yeah, and this is a really bad spot for Kolemoen here. He is pretty far behind on this board, and strangely enough, oh dear.
Wow.
I was going to say, strangely enough, behind in resources, and now there's a challenger to really rub things in.
This is the strength of Secret Paladin just displayed for you right here. I mean, Reno's one of those decks that's, considered to be something that's pretty good against Giga Paladin. You have all these answers. You have a way to get back up to full health after you've been pressured. I mean, he has Reno in hand, and we're still looking like this is a horrible spot for Kolemoen, and actually not going to go for the Mysterious Challenger quite yet.
Yeah, the big thing here, I think, is really the Divine Favor early on that gave Naiman so many additional resources.
Definitely.
Because normally the Warlock decks are able to exchange resources with more aggressive decks like the Secret Paladin decks, and eventually sort of run them out of gas. But here, Naiman is just not going to run out of gas. He has actually drawn more cards than Kolemoen thanks to that Divine Favor.
Yep, and those juggles pretty good. Gets the full clear. Only has to use a shielded mini, but now 6 minions on the board, and Kolemoen, even if he had the AoE, it wouldn't even be that good because the Avenge would go on the pilot from the Shredder.
Right, and that's exactly what Naiman's thinking here. Interesting that most players would have gone for that Mysterious Challenger right away. I mean, it came off the top, it was perfect. But in this situation, Naiman's saying, okay, you need to clear my board first, and then after this event has gone off, then I'll get the second event from the Mysterious Challenger, and now you're in real trouble.
Yeah, then I'll just reload. You know, Mysterious Challenger is a very strong, independent threat. And you know, Naiman recognizes that he already has quite a bit of threat already, and it's also an excellent turn for that value muster there. You know, he was able to play the Knife Juggler into muster against a board of multiple 1-health minions, which really helped solidify his board presence and keep the threat on Kolemoen.
The downside of not playing the Mysterious Challenger is that you don't get to filter the weak top decks out of your deck just yet. So for Naiman's next turn, he's more likely to draw a secret than he would have otherwise been. Like, otherwise, he would have been very likely to draw a different card. That's probably more use.
It is, assuming he is planning on playing Challenger next turn, it still is only a single turn. And this is Kolemoen pulling the trigger.
Forced to use it just for 14 healing here.
Oh, and there's the Avenge. So that actually does end up punishing Naiman just a little bit. Well, a little bit less value from the Challenger.
Yeah, he couldn't have played the Avenge here anyway, though. So, I mean...
It's true. That actually would still be in his deck, regardless.
Right, and maybe he draws it the next turn anyway? Well, actually, no, he already played the event. What am I talking about?
He played one Avenge.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That is Revenge down, so. But Naiman just continuing the juggle plan.
Yeah, he knows that there's no Hellfire here. You probably Hellfire in that situation because there's really no burst damage other than Blessing of Kings and occasionally True Silver. So I like the read here from Naiman saying, like, okay, you probably don't have Hellfire here. Or if you have Shadow Flame, then you don't have a minion to pair with it.
Yeah, and Twisting Nether is not available just yet because it does require that 8 mana, and Kolemoen only going to have 7.
And here Naiman, he gets very meticulously playing his minions and attacking one by one into the Reno, trying to maximize the ability for him to maintain a strong board presence as well as kill the Reno thanks to the jugglers.
It certainly is quite a strong board, and Kolemoen still without Shadow Flame.
That's not what you're looking for. He
Hellfire.
has Twisting Nether, but he's a turn away from casting it, and he may not get much more time.
I think he has to just tap for the Hellfire. I don't see any other way to really come back to this game.
Right, there's lethal on board right now for Naiman, so I mean this is a nightmare for the Reno player, right?
There's Shadow Flame, but he doesn't have the mana anymore.
That sort of would have worked if he got it as the first card drawn that turn.
With the Big Game Hunter, right?
With the Big Game Hunter.
It would have still left 2 minions, 2 pilots, yeah, one of which would be Avenged. It would still be a very rough situation for Kolemoen, but and again, I want to reiterate just how powerful Divine Favor was in this game.
Yes.
We look, Naiman has 3 cards left in his hand. That's 2 more than he would have had at this point if it weren't for Divine Favor. So it just enabled him to just keep this pressure on so much more than he would if he was just naturally drawing off the top of his deck.
And I like the fact that he went for a play that forced his opponent to have something like Hellfire, which is a 1-of in the entire deck, right? I mean, if you play the Mysterious Challenger, you could get blown up by something, maybe like a Big Game Hunter.
So here
or the
Avenge goes up. No, he was hoping Avenge would go on to one of the 4/3s and be able to Big Game Hunter it.
Absolutely.
That does not happen, and Kolemoen concedes, evening the match at 1-1.
Absolutely. So really good play by Naiman there, bringing it back to 1-1. I mean, pretty good match so far. And what are we going to see going forward with the decks remaining?
Well, we see that Naiman has won with his Paladin deck, Kolemoen with his Warrior. So Naiman did have that Tempo Mage deck. Most of the Mage decks we've seen in this tournament so far have been Freeze Mage.
It's true.
How do you think the Tempo Mage deck lines up against what Kolemoen has remaining?
I think it should be quite all right. We didn't see many fireballs, but I'm sure they're there, so that might give him some reads to end games. And that last deck was a Warlock from Naiman, and looking at his entire lineup, that's probably a Zoo because. all of the decks that he's playing seem to be minion-based aggressive decks.
Yeah, Naiman is playing a pretty aggressive lineup. We actually were talking earlier about how a lot of Naiman's success last year did come with aggressive decks like Hunter.
Right.
And so it's no real surprise to see him having a very aggressive lineup here as well.
Right. So if it's a Zoo Warlock, that might actually struggle against Kolemoen's decks, depending on if he finds a Hellfire next time.
Well, Kolemoen does have that a little greedier style of rogue deck than the Oil Rogue with the Auctioneers, and we did see that get kind of punished in one of his matchups earlier, where if he had a little bit more of a faster version of the deck, he might have been able to come out on top.
Yeah.
Right, and we've seen a lot of the pro players essentially play kind of anti-aggro, right? And that's what kind of was their downfall in this situation. So maybe Naiman has the right idea, and if he can kind of punish that rogue for being a bit greedy, it could work out well for him.
Well, we are into the next game, and it will be Naiman's Tempo Mage deck against Kolemoen playing Warlock.
Yep, it's going to be that combo Warlock. Obviously, again, players cannot switch decks between games.
Nor can they have two different Warlock decks.
No, they cannot. Kolemoen really needs to find a Hellfire or at least a Shadow Flame in this one. From my experience, it's quite important to get that early clear against the Tempo deck.
Yeah, the key for the Tempo Mage here is just applying early pressure, and Naiman has exactly that. He has two Sorcerer's Apprentices into Flamewaker. He has the perfect curve, really. He can summon this girl and then play Sorcerer's Apprentice into Flamewaker into Shredder. And if Kolemoen does not find, specifically Hellfire too, because Shadow Flame can often be a little bit too slow because you're not necessarily able to keep a minion in play yourself.
I want to talk about this mulligan for a second. Do you think Kolemoen was thinking that Naiman hadn't made his mulligan yet because the cards were still there? They fall down though, right?
I believe so. I believe you can tell once your opponent has mulligan.
We've had a lot of mulligan kind of just mind games.
The stare down.
Yeah, exactly.
I do wish that both players just saw the mulligans at the same time, that you didn't get information. You weren't encouraged to wait, but I'm sure they'll get fixed eventually.
Yeah, Kolemoen with a decent hand here, I suppose.
Oh, zero mana, zero portals.
Oh, that's
what's in the box? It's a free box, too. Oh, more free things.
Do you just play that out right here?
I think you do.
Yeah.
I think.
I guess Demon Wrath is a pretty big consideration, I suppose.
That's true.
And you might keep Demon Wrath against the Tempo Mage because of this.
Play it. Okay.
Yeah, I think Demon Wrath was something that he was a bit concerned about. And this is a board that you would Demon Wrath.
It's true.
Yeah.
That would be an excellent Demon Wrath.
And it should be in the deck, so almost certainly it is there. And here we go, 0 mana Frostbolt going to hit that. Hit the Imp King boss. Let's see what the missiles go.
So 25. Oh, I don't even know the percentage on killing the Imp King boss, but there it goes. Kills it off. And are we going to see a kill on both of these? Nope, just going to go to face.
We're just going to see face. If either attacked into one, the other could kill the same one. Though this does set up a potentially powerful Defender of Argus. Kolemoen could use Defender and clear off both of the Sorcerer's Apprentices if he wanted to.
Yeah, I think that was a pretty poor result from the Flamewaker right there, because those imps are going to trade for the Sorcerer's Apprentice right now.
Yeah, and the Imp King boss was frozen as well. So.
Yeah, so maybe if he hit the Imp and not the Imp King boss, or hit both of them, that would have been much better.
Yeah, but Naiman now has the option to play this piloted Shredder, and he still has that Tidehunter that he hasn't played yet. And he in the words of Smork, he's missed quite a bit of damage by not having those in play.
Indeed, but we can't blame him for playing around the Demon Wrath. It is a card that's almost certainly in Kolemoen's deck.
What do you think about this Shadow Bolt in the hand? Obviously, we're kind of looking at the Defender of Argus, the prior play, but I mean, Shadow Bolt's not something you typically see. Usually, it's just the Implosion and the Dark Bomb, but lots of removal here for Kolemoen. Maybe it's because of the OTK potential he has in this deck, just wants to clear everything.
Shadow Bolt, I mean, because you're playing Reno, and you generally have only singletons of anything, you're kind of in some cases forced down to things that wouldn't be really considered premium level spells and removal. And I think Kolemoen may have just wanted a little bit more removal against some of the aggressive decks that he would expect to run into with his lineup.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's like Brian mentioned that in Reno decks sometimes you have to play cards that are not as powerful as some other cards, just to have those 30 different cards. And Shadow Bolt is a card that you really want to tech to be better against particular decks. Like right here, getting rid of the Flamewaker, it was quite alright, I would say.
Fireball is pretty nice here. And now Naiman's probably just thinking, please don't have Reno.
Yeah.
Please don't have Reno, not now.
Exactly.
Because we are going into Kolemoen's turn 6, and he would be gaining 21 life Oh, he's not that rich, but he's still he's still able to restore quite a bit of his health here, and he's no longer just facing down lethal.
Has some pocket change right here.
Yeah.
And gonna go for that heal bot, which will put him out of range of dying right now.
Unless there's a frostbolt.
He's not rich, he's just well off.
Yeah, you can say that.
All right, what are we going to see out this unstable portal? Almost certainly going to be played here, I would imagine.
Yep.
Yeah, so right now Naiman has he has 6 damage on the board. Fireball represents 7 because of the Mana Worm. The unstable portal rather represents an additional point. And
oh my goodness!
Wow,
that's actually pretty interesting because that
assassin can play it right now.
Yeah, he can actually, and that's like that represents a lot of damage that's very difficult for Kolemoen to interact with.
Yeah,
he'd have to Shadow Flame something really big to get that off the board.
So what is Naiman's read here? Does he think that Kolemoen went for the heal bot because he was kind of holding on to the Reino for later? Or, okay, it looks like he just want to hedge his bets and kill off the board.
So here, what Naiman did here, I believe, is attempt to play around the possibility of Power Overwhelming plus Shadow Flame, because it's one of the few things with the amount of mana that Kolemoen does have that can actually get that 7/5 stealth off the board.
Or a mind control deck. He also had 4 minions on the board.
Yeah, that would be another possible option as well.
All right, so can Kolemoen stay alive?
Yeah, Arcane Golem into a Doomsayer from the
I mean, frankly, I think that's about his out here. I mean, he can heal himself with Earthen Ring. He would go to 16. He's already facing down 11 on the board, and has to suspect there's some burn on the other side.
Yeah, realistically, probably there's Raider and Farseer. Just hope that there's no Fireball.
It's possible. The Arcane Golem may be the only way he can actually potentially win, but it's such a small percentage chance that he'd have a chance to win after that. Even if he did get super lucky.
A little bit unfortunate for him that the stealth Raven
Shadow Flame here, and if something small comes off,
how small does that have to be?
9. No, that is still. Well,
there's another fireball.
He can't cast both this turn, but it still is exactly lethal with the 9 plus 1 from the ping. That's 16. So Naiman winning with his Tempo Mage, going up 2-1 in the series.
Yeah, that was a good attempt though with that Farseer.
Yeah, absolutely. So that Ravenhole Assassin proving to be key there. I mean, basically those unstable portals have been working out pretty well. Obviously, the Murloc Tidehunter, not the greatest, but I want to talk to you guys.
Some damage in.
It did get some damage in. I want to talk to you guys about his decision to bring that Tempo Mage, because we've seen Freeze Mage in the past, but one of the downsides of having Freeze Mage is you're forced into some certain bans.
Yeah, I think that with the ban in the Conquest format, it does really, you build your decks in a certain way that you're either planning on banning a particular deck, like we heard from a number of players throughout this event. They're like, I built my lineup like this, I banned this, and that's just strictly what they do. And maybe if your opponent doesn't have that deck, you switch things up. Tempo Mage, I think, is quite possibly a reaction to the expected popularity of Druid, as well as Paladin. I think that the Tempo Mage with the Flame Wakers, and we saw a bunch of Arcane Missiles, it tends to be a good matchup against those styles of decks.
Yeah, I think it can work quite well with those Arcane Blasts and all the early tools to clear those. And yeah, the Druid matchup is always huge. There was a moment in time where it was not doing as well since Druids were playing Darnassus Aspirants, but there's almost no aspirants around right now. Some players are still playing it, but not that many. It
has been interesting to see sort of the rise and fall of Darnassus Aspirant as
and rise again and fall again, right?
Yeah, it's really sort of the cyclical nature of the metagame, and in particular just the builds of particular decks. We now see Living Roots used much more frequently, whereas Darnassus Aspirant sort of held that role for quite a while.
Yeah, the mirror entity Darnassus Aspirant, it's just it's so bad for the mage.
Yeah, but at the same time, if you have those cards in your deck, it makes it that much worse against something like Control Warrior. I mean, I've casted a lot of Chinese games, and in China, they feel like if you're running things like Darnassus and Living Roots, that Control Warrior is actually favored in that matchup.
I mean, every card that you put in that is a lower power card, and those are great utility cards. They're great, early reactions to aggressive decks. But against decks like Control Warrior, they are going to give you a little bit of weak spot.
All right, well, getting into this next match, game number 4, Naiman 1 game away from advancing to the EU Regionals, or excuse EU Championships, my bad. And yeah, going to be the Zoo, it looks like, against Kolemoen's Reno, which hasn't worked out well for him so far.
Now that's a good hand for Kolemoen right here. It doesn't get much better, so it's his third try, yes, but This might work out. If there's a time that this deck is going to pick up a win, looking at the starting hand, this should be it.
Yeah, the Zombie Chow is the best thing you can do on turn 1 against pretty much any aggressive deck, and it answers this Flame Imp quite well.
Yeah, and also the Iron Beak Owl. There's always something to silence in a Warlock deck. Maybe it's an Nerubian Egg, maybe something else, but it finds the target.
And not only that is Hellfire as well,
Yeah.
so you can clear the middle turns of the game quite easily.
Yeah, playing the Reno version of this Control Warlock only runs 1 copy. It's pretty nice to pick it up early.
Right, that's typically what you want to see as the Control Warlock player against a more aggressive deck. You want to see that Owl into the Hellfire because you know some sort of crazy sticky minion is going to be on the board. Unfortunately for Naiman, typically the strategy for the more aggressive Warlock is to go for damage first and stickiness second, but only really had that Haunted Creeper to put on the board.
So now he has the Nerubian Egg, which is pretty good here, especially considering Kolemoen has just used his Owl, so he won't be able to neutralize it quite so easily.
Yeah, and the Dark Iron Dwarf is an excellent follow-up to the Egg.
Right, going to be able to pop that the next turn and turn that into a 4/4. Gets double 4/4s on the board, which is pretty hard to deal with for a Control Warlock.
Yeah, Hellfire doesn't quite got it. There's also the Mortal Coil, but only 1.
All right, so we see what we've been predicting for the last couple turns, going to be this Dark Iron Dwarf come out in Rubian and a Dark Iron Dwarf on the field. They're best buddies, hanging out 4/4/4/4 across the board. And what can Kolemoen do about this?
Ooh, a Soulfire.
He can technically clear the board.
If he really wanted to, he could Arcade Golem the Soulfire. I suspect we will not see that play.
Well, to be fair, I mean, giving a Zoo mana isn't the
actually
worst.
not terrible.
I don't know.
I mean, there is the threat of you also just are ripping your hand apart with the Soulfire too. But yeah, I mean,
No, you'll discard the coin. Don't worry about it.
It's definitely not great. I mean,
no, I like the Soulfire for sure.
Yeah,
I actually think that Soulfire, one of the things that's great about Soulfire is that it can sort of help open up your combo range effectively in terms of how much burst damage you can do. It can also just be a great removal spell, as we saw right there.
Yep. And Naiman keeps up with the pressure. Imp Boss into Direwolf Alpha.
And the Imp King boss is quite good here because it does make something like Hellfire substantially worse. It's another 4 health minion, and if Kolemoen does cast that Hellfire, it'll actually add another 1/1 minion to the board.
I think you might still go for it, though, because you just Hellfire and you can use the Mortal Coil on the Nerubian. You're taking a significant amount of damage off of the board. It's going to be 4 from the Nerubian and 4 from the Direwolf Alpha as well, so you're taking quite a significant amount off. And then from there, you can maybe use your anti-killbot potentially, but a lot of pressure, like you said, onto Kolemoen here.
I suspect that will be the play we do see. It will leave Naiman with, it looks like 3 damage on the board and do 3 to himself.
Yeah, that's
So
actually scary.
Kolemoen will be down to 12 against 3 power already in the board.
That's the bad number. It's kind of like against against the Warlock with 6 mana. It's kind of like when you play against Druid and I don't want to be at 14 because the Druid might have 14 damage. Well, the Zoo Warlock with the power overwhelming into Doomguard does deal 9 extra from the hand. So.
Yeah, if there's anything left in play, and we do,
wow.
we do just see Healbot here.
Very
Oh my
defensive
goodness.
here. And
Wow.
I mean, yeah, you could die to that play, but for Druid, I mean, it's until turn 9. As the Warlock, you never really keep Doomguard or Power Overwhelming in your opening hand unless you have definitely something you want to activate, like a Nerubian Egg.
And this is
so-
fairly brutal here because Naiman has Loatheb. Naiman is actually able
Absolutely.
to shut out all of Kolemon's
Wow.
spell-based answers, which includes that Hellfire, which he could have cast last turn.
It's Reno or bust. Nope.
Looks like bust to
Is he
me.
just dead?
He can play Loatheb, he can play Arcane Golem, but he can't play anything that gets enough damage off this board.
Yeah, I think we're done here. There's just
Oh my
there's nothing you can do.
goodness.
That Loatheb was so well timed, that even that little bit of extra damage from the Doomguard.
I mean, right
Nothing
now,
to do.
Naiman has 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. He has lethal on board.
Look at Naiman. He's just
And-
relaxing
and
back
the
like,
Doomguard in
yeah, I
hand."
got this. I just beat Reno twice with aggressive decks.
Yeah.
No problem. Kolemoen is just... He doesn't know what to do.
I wanna point it out that this is the 3rd game in a row where Kolemoen has Arcane Golem and Twisting Nether in his hand.
Wow.
Maybe the deck was just a little bit slow for the aggressive lineup from
I mean,
Naiman.
it seemed crazy, but that Arcane Golem might have saved him if he went for it earlier.
And there it is. Naiman is the winner. He will advance to the Europe Winter Championship next month.
I know, just great play by him, and just a great story, honestly. Someone who was suspended, was unable to play last year in the championships, coming back, basically a comeback year for him, and right away he's showing, he's putting his mark on this season.
Yeah, I mean, this is really a sort of a redemption story for Naiman, I think. He is, looking to prove that he belongs here, and, the way that he played here, it was excellent.
Yeah, I didn't really spot any mistakes. He knows what he's doing. I think that the lineup that he brought was an excellent meta call, but he made it very far. And even though he came from the losers bracket, it doesn't matter. He's in the top 8. He's gonna be fighting for that $100,000.
In some ways, coming from the losers bracket's actually even harder, right? There's so many more matches that you have to win. We haven't seen him this entire time on stream, but he's definitely proved himself. I think this is losers bracket round 9.
Yeah, it's something like that. There are a lot of matches. I mean, we only showed so many on our stream, but these players have been battling out all weekend, and this is what for. This is what the culmination of it is. He is going to be moving on to the Europe Championships.
Yeah, on the other hand, Kolemoen, just really disappointing to see that he falls down twice on stream. He was so close. Had to just go 1-1 to make it. Just one win in the last 2 matches after coming this far. Falls just short. Dreams crushed, Travits.
Yeah, we saw him getting a little bit wrecked there with this slower combo decks, but he did win a lot of matches to get there. So even though the audience back at home saw him play twice and lose twice, those were the 2 games that he lost. Everything else that he played off stream was were victories.
It's true. I mean, the story that we see at home may be shaped by those results, but he did extremely well to get to this point, and there are many more chances for players to reach the World Championship at the end of the year with the Hearthstone Championship Tour throughout all the seasons.
All right, so yeah, I'm sorry, I got some stuff in my ear for a second there. Sorry about that.
No worries.
And we don't have an interview, unfortunately, and we're gonna throw it to the break in a second. Any last words, guys?
I mean, I think that so far we've seen, great games and, a whole lineup of many unknown, some known players who've made it through. And, yeah, I think that this has been an excellent event, and I'm looking forward to casting the next match.
Yeah, 1 more match to go. We have 7 amazing new players coming in. And I'm not gonna be casting the next one, but I'll definitely be watching it to see who is gonna be the final 8 Winter Championship participant.
All right, so we have our next match. It's going to be Lemmy Hopwar versus ROL. Follow us on Twitter, guys, at Bunny Hopwar. My mistake. There you go. And follow us on Twitter at Play Hearthstone and on Facebook at Hearthstone. And yeah, we'll see you guys next, and stay tuned.